You're ready.
Folks, this public hearing is approximately 6:31 on September 9th, 2025 at the CB14 district. So purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony with respect to an amendment application to the Board of Standards and Appeals, calendar number 1-88-BZ 1593 Coney Island Avenue, block 6731, lot 65, 165, 70, 73, 75, and 76. An application has been made to allow for the addition of a partial fourth and partial fifth floor in the R5/C2-3 portion of the premises, contrary to the underlying floor area FAR ZR33-121, wall height and sky exposure plane ZR33-431, rear yard ZR33-292, and parking ZR36-21 regulations. So for those who don't know the alphabet transformer suit that I just mentioned, ZR is zoning regulations. So I'm just calling through all the things that this is applying. And so before we get any further, board members, let's go introduce ourselves around the table. So I'll start first. So my name is Carl Henry Cesar. I go by Carl, and I'm the chairperson of Community Board 14. Ray Alvarez.
Deborah Valentine, second. Susan Sergio, board member. Arnold Parker, third vice chair.
You ever did that board member? Alex Sussman, board member.
Steve Foskey, board member.
Minutes. Board member, primary board member.
Excellent. So thank you very much. So,
I'm Sean Campbell, district manager, Community Board 14.
so members of the public wish to testify on this issue, you must register for time. So please sign up at back tables with Sarah. Please state clearly for the record your name, address, and if you are a resident organization you are representing. So the first speaker will be Goldstein representing the applicant. So Mr. Goldstein, you're up.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all here again. Here tonight on behalf of Yeshiva Chaim Berlin. It's a matter of housekeeping. We did the CBA. We provided notification to the CBA. We're here today, as mentioned, to ask for a modification of the BSA application from 1988. 1988, the Board of Standards and Appeals allowed for the construction of Yeshiva Chaim Berlin, which has been in that location for 37 years. The property that we're talking about is the corner of Coney Island Avenue and Locust Avenue. It has a lot of area, although with a number of tax lots, it's treated as one building, about 22,880 square feet, with 242.5 square feet of frontage on Coney Island Avenue and 100 feet of frontage on Locust Avenue. And as mentioned, the yeshiva's been here for 37 years since the original grant. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the yeshiva. The building on the corner of Locust houses really a 2-3-story double height space for the study hall. So this picture in the far is the dormitory building, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Next slide, please. So this portion of the building is what we're going to discuss and the requests that we're asking. So the yeshiva was started in 1905 in New York. It services students 18 to 24 years old, and it's an intensive post-high school undergraduate degree for intensive Talmud study, and it really prepares those 18 to 20-year-olds for careers in the rabbinate or just how to study and continue their education in the Talmud, as well as other Judaic studies. And it prepares them for their life to lead their lives. Interesting slide, please. The building itself is a 3-story structure with a cellar on along Coney Island Avenue and a lighter, almost a triple-light story building on the corner houses a study hall. Next slide, please. The existing building was approved in 1988 has 3 stories, waivers that they received were floor area, wall height, and rear yard. The existing building has 42,000 square feet of floor area, houses the yeshiva, and there's 239 students, and the goal of the yeshiva is to allow the students to really stay within the building so that they have more intense and uninterrupted focus for their studies, and it really creates a situation where they're living, eating, and studying in one space. They really gain more by doing that as opposed to what's happening now, where some of them have to feed back and forth to the yeshiva, some of them have to rent space throughout the neighborhood. But it'll allow them, the development will allow them to stay within the building and advance the programmatic yeshiva. Next slide, please. Or sorry, rather, that one. Cellar housing. Next slide. Cellar houses the lunchroom and offices, as well as storage and the kitchens. Next slide. First story, the building has the main study hall at the right of your screen, as well as offices and classrooms on the left of your screen. Next slide. This second story has dormitory rooms and bathrooms, as well as a double height library for the students at Yeshiva. They can either spill over and use extra resources and reference books that are housed in the library, or spill over and take a break from the main study hall and study in the library. Next slide. Here you see the double height portion of the study hall with the women's section at the women's gallery at the second floor. That's to the right of your screen, as well as classrooms, and then we go. Next slide. Those little seats to add a fourth and a fifth floor, straight and marking of the existing dormitory building. It'll keep the same footprint of the dormitory building with the maintain the dormitory between the neighbors. It'll allow them to increase, go to the next slide. It'll allow them, it's mirror image floors almost with double study halls, and it'll allow them to, again, house all the students in the building, allow them to meet the programmatic needs so that the majority of the students who are not either local or married will be able to stay within the building, not have to venture out. It'll mean that there's less traffic on the street, there's less, people walking around because we'll have additional study areas and lounges for the students. At capacity, we'll have about 240 beds. At capacity, the yeshiva doesn't anticipate having more than 300 students. So we feel that this is really an essential component of their program and will allow them to meet all the programmatic needs that they see for the foreseeable future. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So, Mr. Goldstein, thank you very much for that. And so let me first ask, do we have any registered speakers? So then in that case, do I have any questions from board members? Yes.
Just about on the last part, I know it's 2 floors up. What's the current count of that? How much is it gonna take them by?
So right now we have 239 students with 120 beds, and we're going to develop them for next.
Thank you.
So I have a question. And so in the amendments taken on facts, right, some of the outstanding violations, ECB. So could you provide clarity on that? Because when I was looking at the documentation, I didn't understand, so I want clarity on the violations.
Those violations, like sort of kind of routine violations for boilers and elevators, since about 1990, I don't think there's been a violation of construction, right? That nature. It's just we've been a file.
My understanding, great people, so not necessarily documentation, but it's
Thank you. Just had these 2 quick questions. First, just to confirm, so the rear yard is not going to be intensified in any way. It's going to be the same rear yard could be exactly right. Okay. And then secondly, so it was stated in the statement of facts that students they're not allowed. They're not allowed. Correct.
I think the students don't have cars for the dormitory. Part of the reason for the dormitory is so that the students don't have a car.
Okay. And then for the, just so I understand, with the, increase in, dormitory occupancy, is there going to be any associated increase in staff or anything like that? With the, the occupancy?
We don't anticipate more increase in staff. These are older students. The schedule that they really sees them studying in small group study in the large study hall.
You know, served on premises, limited residential sanitation for them. So is there any plans for refuse storage, augmenting sanitation?
So the application has existing here with range storage for the refuse. Then we could provide any increased trash pickup, I guess, I'll have to time if sanitation can handle it. And leave that if not something else. We'll talk about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other additional questions? Board members regarding the application?
Yes, I'm sorry, just one more question that's been made. I saw the reading as well that, the restrictions in terms of being able to use the dormitory above the study areas. Just wondering about that as well, just, again, by having the extra story. But
Exactly. So there are really two aspects to this. The reason we chose this, instead of spreading it across the whole building, the reason we chose it located here. Number one, just practically, there's skylights above the study hall and there's all the study hall. So additionally, building over the study hall walls out. Additionally, there is a religious mandate or a religious document that says you should try as close when possible with what happens. And that for sanctuary space for the study hall. Why we, in this situation, where first of all, practically it makes no sense, it's easy construction as well. We have the design.
Do I see any other questions from board members?
It's just a second.
So then we have a motion on the floor. Second. And so all those in favor of this application?
Aye.
Are there any members who are abstaining? Are there any board members who are against? Are there any board members who are ineligible? Seeing none, the motion carries. Mr. Goldstein, and aware of the process, but basically at our October board meeting, when I chaired the board, that's when this recommendation will come for the board and then.
Thank you very much. I see all this.
Thank you very much. I will take it.
Sometimes why you wrong.
I have no idea. It was construction.
Huh?
I thought it was a construction team.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Are you the applicant for next
One
one?
of the applicants, team isn't here yet. Okay.
So. It's all good.
Okay.
You know, he's got to go. So folks, good evening. This public hearing is called to order at 7 p.m. on September 29th. CB14 District Office. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony with respect to a variance and a special permit application before our standards in the field. Calendar number 2025-6-BZ 583 East 23rd Street, block 5223, lot 2. An application has been made pursuant to section 72-21 and 73-134 of the zoning resolution of the city of New York as amended to permit the change of use of an existing house of worship in use group 3, parentheses, open close B, to an ambulatory diagnostic or treatment healthcare also in use group 3, open close parentheses B, in excess of 1,500 square feet, located within an R3X zoning district, contrary to use regulations, zoning regulation 22-131B and 22-132B, front yard zoning regulation 24-34, height and setback zoning regulation 24-521, and parking zone regulation 25-31 regulations. Because the existing house of worship was also constructed pursuant to a variance granted on June 23rd, 2009, the proposed change of use is also contrary to BSA calendar number 10-09-BC. So before we continue, board members, let's please go around and introduce ourselves. I'll start with myself. Saylor, Carl, the chairperson of Brooklyn Community Board.
Greg Alvarez, next board.
Deborah Balancing, second vice chair. And a third field board member.
Barnella Parker, third vice chair.
Alex Lessman, board member. Board member.
Dave Pratt, board member.
Lisa Garrett, board member.
Board of Ed, board member, regional chair. Primarily board member.
Kirsty Udall, board member. I'm Sean Campbell, district manager at CB14.
Thank you. And so if members of the public wish to testify on this issue, please, I'm letting you know you must register at the time. So please sign up at the back table with Sarah. Please state clearly for the record your name, address, and if you are a resident or organization, if you are a resident. And so the first speakers will be representing the applicant. So could you please introduce yourself, sir?
Jed Weiss on behalf of Mayor Hematology, from Shelby Mobile, PC. This is, as mentioned, a proposed variance and special permit to allow an ambulatory diagnostic treatment healthcare facility in our 3X district, which essentially would be an adaptive reuse of an existing house of worship, but also allowed by BSA variance. The proposed actions would convert an existing house of worship to medical offices. That's the existing building. Current photo. Zoning map, the zoning is R3X, which allows 1 and 2 family homes and community facilities. Site is located on the southwest corner of the block, intersection of Farragut Avenue, Farragut Road, and East 23rd Street. It's a 50 by 100 lot with 5,000 square feet of lot area. Land use map shows that it's predominantly 1 and 2 family district with a scattering of multiple homes. Within the district. So the existing building was constructed after a 2009 BSA variance. which allowed for a house of worship that violated the front yard and maximum building height. Its largest room of assembly accommodates 90 persons on the second floor. Worship hall. There are no exterior changes proposed to the building. Proposed conversion to medical offices, which would be hematology and oncology specialists. Services will include chemotherapy, immunotherapy, clinical trials, as well as consultations. And the proposed facility hours of operation would be Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Maximum of 24 patients per day would visit the facility, and that would be about an average of 3 patients per hour. And typical appointments would be ranging from 1 hour to 3 hours. So not a lot of high volume being proposed here. So the waivers needed to convert this building to a medical office. In lower density districts, for medical offices exceeding 1,500 square feet, a special permit is required from the BSA under 73-134. That allows medical offices greater than 1,500. The existing building, which is 5,000 square feet, approximately, is over 1,500. Therefore, requires a special permit. The front yard and height waivers are the same as applied to the existing building. They need to be reissued because those were only issued with the specific purpose of that house of worship. And finally, parking is triggered here. There's no parking required for house of worship. 12 parking spaces are required for this use. However, we know that the majority of projected trips will be drop-offs and accessorize. Drop-offs and pickups will occur in a dedicated area on the road. These are some of the findings. These are the findings for the special permit. So since we are outside a lower density growth management area, the main finding is that the amount of open area and its distribution on zoning line conform to standards appropriate to the character of the neighborhood. Building is built currently to about a 50% lot coverage, and that will not change. The building that is generally consistent with the character of the lot. Or may describe appropriate conditions, safeguards, and minimize adverse effects on the character of the surrounding area as well. That's one part of the application. The next part on the next slide is the zoning variances pursuant to 7221. First, that there are unique physical conditions, including irregularity, narrowness, and shallowness of lot size and shape. In this case, the unique physical condition is the existing building. The B finding is that because of the physical condition, because of those physical conditions, there's not a reasonable possibility that a development, enlargement, or extension, etc., could bring a reasonable return, and that the grant of a variance is necessary to enable the owner to realize a reasonable rate of return. The C finding is that the variance will not alter the essential neighborly character of the district or the neighborhood in which the zoning lot is located. And the D finding is that the owner or previous owner did not create the hardship. In other words, it's not a self-created hardship on the site. And finally, the E finding is that the variance granted is the minimum necessary to achieve the positive rate of return. And in terms of Joseph Valente, the architect, these are his plan.
Good evening, everyone. Joseph Kalape, architect for the project. So what we have up here is showing you what as of right would be and raising the building, taking it down, and building a new building there. Because really repurposing that building for residential probably would not work, especially the character of the neighborhood. So what I showed here is if we started with a empty site and with the setbacks and all the coverage, we could put a two-family home there. One would be one would front East 23rd, and the other one to front Farragut Road. A very general overview to explain what the other option would be if we weren't permitted to do the repurposing of a use. Next slide. So the proposed site plan here shows what the variance would be as far as the 15-foot required front yard. The existing building that was granted under the house of worship. So obviously we were coming back to ask for that same variance because we want to leave the building as it is intact and just do an interior renovation. Very important for everyone to note that it's a pure interior renovation. We're not touching the outside of the building, never our intention. So basically showing the existing condition here, we have two parking spaces and existing planters, the existing entrance, we're going to leave the entrance as is, which comes off of East 23rd. And there is an emergency exit on Farragut Road here. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the site. So, and that empties out right into this area right here. And we talked about a drop off before. The intended drop off would be this area right here. We talked about Farragut. I thought we said East 23rd. You were okay. So I stand corrected.
Subject
So-
to DOT.
Okay, all right. Because of the- okay. All right, initially we talked about 23rd. I apologize. So, everything, the landscaping, there's pavers in the front here. There's concrete walkway here going to remain. Trees in the front here. We have existing street trees that are going to remain. We exceed the amount of street trees required. Once again, they're all in good shape. There's no issues with those street trees that they're dying or need to be replaced. The rear yard will remain intact. And as I said, everything else is as is today. So here renovation of the cellar, we have some mechanical spaces downstairs that will have to obviously remain as is. We have an elevator machine room behind it, remaining as is. Our renovation would be just to add these offices for staff lounge. This is the south floor. The toilet for the staff, some storage, janitor closet to clean the space, and this is a pharmacy. This is not a retail pharmacy. This is not people coming in off the street. This is just for the patients being served by our facility. And it's just being, like I said, elevated 1, 2 existing stairs, means of egress to remain as is. Next, please. First floor, existing main lobby, existing doors, existing grand stair. Remembering this was created as a house of worship, so this lobby is quite grand for what we want to use it for, but we're going to use it as it is. So you have a grand stair that walks us up to what was the second level, which was where the house of worship was, the 90 persons that were on Earth before. What we're going to do is renovate the first floor to contain all our exam rooms. These exam rooms will be utilized for the patients that would be infused upstairs, and we'll get to that later on. Once again, egress stair. This is a communicating stair here. Reception coming off the main entrance. You receive, you'll sit and wait, then you'll be called, you'll go into the back for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One of these 6 exam rooms. Required by the state, we have our clean, our soil utility, and we have an office for the person running this, the administrator runs this facility. Patient toilet required for these rooms, and there's a toilet here required for waiting. These are all New York State requirements. That's why I have 2 there. And that's what we answer in these functions. One might wonder what these are. They're just storage, but we have to fully separate them. Windows all remain as is. No new windows. No closing of windows. Slide, please. upstairs. This is the stair that I was referring to before. Leads to a little landing here, and we have a door vestibule that leads us into what would be infusion. This is what Jen was referring to before. These patients are there hour to 3 hours, more towards the 3 hour area. So they're infused on these chairs, and they're monitored by the staff that's centrally located that can have vision of all of these bays. So there is 9 bays total. Existing elevator for handicap accessibility. And then we have another a med room block for control surfaces. A patient toilet for these patients here. Soil required, it's basically a janitor's closet, and we put dirty in there because we have to keep this place very clean. Egress stair. And all of the fenestration and punches in the building remain the same.
That's the end of the.
Okay, well, any questions?
Yeah, so let's have the board member.
So just 2 questions. Maybe have to go back to the first slide that showed the exterior. I think is the doorway already handicap accessible?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And-
so if you look here, there's a ramp that takes you up to this landing. There's 2 steps, 2 risers that go to the main entrance, but previous to the house of worship, we put a handicap accessible ramp here, so it's fully accessible to the building.
And then there was something about having a couple of parking spaces. I was wondering where
Okay,
that.
so right here's a curb cut. It's right off of this picture here, and there's 2 parking spaces on this gravel driveway right here.
So you don't have to like take anything down. To
No.
build, parking.
Basically, as I said, and I will, here's the trees we talked about. This is obviously not when the leaves are on there, but we have our shrubbery here where everything is remaining as is. No intention of doing anything else.
More of a statement than a question, but a combination of both. Live under the city of Yasmin, 5,000 square foot lot on the corner of 75 wide street, entitled to transit-oriented development. It's in the transit-oriented development map. So therefore, theoretically, you'd be able to build a 5-story building over there, residential use. And you're just leaving it as is. So isn't that more beneficial to the people to leave it as is, as opposed to building 3 more stories?
The as of right scenario doesn't count we analyzed it as a qualified residential site, which is the transit oriented development.
Right, so that would
Doesn't
have, that would have a bigger impact on the neighborhood.
Right.
Try to go that route as opposed to the.
Well.
I'm giving you a benefit.
It's helping.
Oh, I-
The people here are gonna say, well, it's gonna be, yeah, you know what, you could decide as of right today, to say, scrap this whole plan, put a 5-story building. Right,
Yeah.
am I wrong about that? Did I miss something?
It would still be a 1 and 2 family house, but the FAR that we accounted for was a full 1.0 FAR, not the 0.75.
Yeah, I want to make sure they weren't, because I kind of.
Yes.
I have a related comment. First of all, the transit or the development, it includes that amount. Should have an FAR 1 point. It could be 5. That's just something. So. Was appear to. You're saying that was. It's not that too bad.
It's just the plot in there, so I don't have any sections through.
Yeah, that's
Fortunately.
confusing.
There's a zoning analysis in the application that's associated with this scenario, and it does show 1.0.
Okay, so you're saying that, that it's in the application, but it's in the presentations.
Where we actually do the as of right with the whole zoning chart
Yeah,
that we included in the in your paperwork. And it shows you also the section through it, how high it would be. It gives you a little more perspective than just this plot plan. This plot plan is really just showing us our setbacks and showing the footprint, which is 2,500 square foot. It's 2,490. That's just this first.
Right, now I know what you're saying. Yep. It's a little, it's, let's just call it confusing. Most people look back and go, oh, you're saying that absent this variance, or if you chose to go back, it would be a two-family house, and people just, I think this diagram just wasn't enough short, it's showing what attributes and where they develop. Like, which is a matter of concern. Just wanted to make sure we.
Understood.
So, quick thing, so I see hands in the back, so quick heads up, this is the order of operations, so. First thing is getting questions from board members, and then the second thing is, so I see your hands, but I'm just letting you know, the second thing too is. If you have registered in the back of Sarah, that's great, so then after I get questions. So I'm not disrespecting you, I'm just letting you, so I see your hand, right? But
So you're saying I should put my hand down if you ask for questions?
yes,
Questions up on the floor.
I know I heard him. I can hear you very well. Well educated. Thank you. I'll wait.
okay, thank you, sir.
Just a few questions. Hours of operation. That going to be. Or would that be?
Rich Lavelle, hi. You should feel free to include that in your resolution. BSA basically is able to condition the variance.
So,
We're not really hearing down here.
sorry, how many staff members?
Doug Nierenberg, the applicant as well. Project, just a bit of color on the project itself. Why we were attracted to the site and why I think this is an appropriate use for both the building itself and the neighborhood. My background in mythology and ecology specifically relates to community access. It's no secret that, you know, if you have to go see an oncologist nowadays, odds are you're going to NYU or Memorial Sloan Kettering or any one of these big, you know, names in the city, which is wonderful in terms of care, but isn't so wonderful for the patient. Right? If you have to go once a week or once a month, but you're not feeling so great, that's probably not the best use of, you know, whatever time you have left. Disease state. What I've done in the community setting is we've created that more closer to home care where you can still get quality care but closer. So if I would say, if any one of us, myself, I grew up in the community, right? Thinking of if someone from my family had to travel to Manhattan, that wouldn't be such a great use. But if I wanted to get care closer to home, it's not something I would get on Coney Island Avenue while I'm feeling sick. I need something that's close to home, but it's still fine. I need a facility that has the services I need, but it's still, you know, warm enough that it's in the. So looking at this facility, you're thinking of who's going to be here and who's going to be coming. I'll have hematologists and oncologists. We're going to have a nurse practitioner. You're going to have your front desk secretary. You're going to have a medical assistant, pharmacist on site. That's your core staff members that see patients on site. Thinking of that patient that's going to be coming. You can't have many patients on site at any given time. You can have a patient and a spouse, a patient and a caregiver, patients that are dropped off. These are not patients that are driving to work anymore. It's patients that are coming by an ambulance, by excessive care, accessory, and whatnot. So we're really trying to create a situation where the building is not a factory like urgent care that's seeing 100 patients a day. You're seeing 10, 15, 20 patients a day that are quality patients that need intensive monitoring. They're there for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours receiving chemotherapy. That's something that needs to happen in a more quiet, subdued setting. Looking from the building's perspective, what attracted us is the same things that probably concern the neighborhoods. Right? So looking at this building as is, I didn't build it. I didn't choose that there should be a church in the residential neighborhood and all the politics that came with that 20 years ago. But recognizing that it's there and it exists today, this is a great use for a sleeper property in a sleeper neighborhood to bring a community service in a quiet way to something that exists. So with that, I think that may find in a lot of pieces of the puzzle that are very granular. That's legal. Of course, I'm happy to answer questions.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just connected to that. So you do have another location, is that right? Can you give us an idea of how those other operations operate in terms of staffing? Are you going to be, having people, your staff, are they going to be at different locations during the course of the day? Then how is that generally going to work in terms of their location there and transport?
So I don't move staff between locations throughout the day. That's what was dedicated to the existing sites. They want my staff to be embedded within that site so they know their patients. These patients are cyclical. People will leave month over month. And that's a benefit to the patients to see the familiar faces that they saw last month throughout the cycle. And as someone who sees patients, I can tell you when my patients walk through the front door without examining them, without talking to them. I can tell you if they're better or worse. Just by the way you do the presentation. So that's something that I think is a benefit of how we do it here. Providers may not be there necessarily 5 days a week. That hematologists and oncologists may only come in 3 days here and 2 days at a different site, depending on how much it's time. But in terms of this specific site, same flavor day in day.
So it's generally like 6 people. Okay. And then this question, number of spaces on site. So you have 6 exam rooms, 9 locations where people, can receive their treatment. We were told there's 24 patients over the course of the day on average. So we're just trying to connect the math there. So why it seems like there's an overlap.
For anyone who's ever played tennis, all the pieces don't fit in perfectly. Not every patient. That play tennis, right? Today's kids don't play that. But not every patient that comes in leaves into the beginning of the next patient comes. So you end up with gaps that look different. Part of what we're seeing here is that if I had to ideally build this from scratch, I wouldn't necessarily build to the same size. But the building, the envelope exists, and we're putting in a spacious fit for what we're doing. At the same time, just because there's chairs, let's say on the second floor, doesn't mean they all get occupied by patients. Came with a spouse, and if I have a chair next to you, you're going to want your spouse to sit next to you. So it's not a perfect, there's 9 chairs and everyone's here for 3 hours, you start multiplying how many people fit today. It's never a perfect science. It's almost like an appointment. Very rare that the plane has every middle seat. Same thing on the first floor, where you get your blood pressure taken and your blood work done, isn't necessarily where the physician can get examined. So you kind of rotate different stations as you go throughout the process, as opposed to just one patient in every space at every.
All right. So then, actually, just sorry. No, go ahead. Sorry. So we talked about the as of right here. So what are the limitations to have the as of right option with the like to have a 2-family within that building?
Oh, within the existing church building.
Correct.
Yeah, it's basically that, first of all, anybody who reuses this building is going to come back to BSA. And, there's a determination made, and speak to this about retrofitting this building to become a 2-family. It just becomes extremely challenging given the fact that there's a layout congregants. And the work that it would require would run into literally, over $1 million to retrofit this, and it just couldn't be.
The cost about maybe a little bit less, but about the same as building the new option or?
The new option, so the new option, when we looked at, there's a financial analysis that's submitted as part of every BSA application. The financial analysis here just looked at basically demolishing the existing building and then rebuilding the two. And basically the numbers just wouldn't work, just because given the nature of the demolition, et cetera, it made more sense to adaptively use the existing building. And of course, the idea here is, in Zeb, we find an applicant who, is putting in something which is fairly reasonable in terms of the use of that building. Whereas if it went back to BSA in another context, it's possible that somebody would reuse the existing building or apply for waivers to allow more robust use of the site. I understand, given the history of the building, that the church building itself accommodated over 84 churchgoers at the same time, which would, potentially it could be that use. It also could be something which would be even more challenging. So that's, I think, one of the reasons that we're so interested in the site.
All right, just one more question. I'm sorry. So there is the question of whether or not it's self-created. So what's the argument here to say that this isn't self-created? Are you a contract purchaser? Have you already purchased it? So you've already bought the property. Okay. All right. So what then is with the full knowledge of the limitation of the property with BSA?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And so, the question that Greg's asking is basically one of the findings you have to make for the variance is that you do not create your own hardship. So generally speaking, that's the D finding, is that, purchasing a property subject to existing zoning and existing limitations would not be considered self-created hardship. Famous cases, Douglas and Civic Association, where they bought this land that was in a swamp, and then when people looked at that and said, "What do you mean you're getting a variance? You knew it was a swamp." The idea is that the BSA could then say, "Well, you created this because you knew the condition." More importantly than that, though, is that when we're looking at the existing site and looking at the building on the site, the fact that there is an existing building can be factored into this unique condition on the site. So you're not basically coming to the corner lot and getting a vacant lot and Zeb saying, "Hey, I'd like to build this building here." Even I acknowledge that that's not a good variance application. The idea that you could build this from the ground up and have a viable variance. What makes this a variance case is the fact that your existing building here is part of the unique condition of the lot. And what the cases have shown in BSA is that you're allowed to factor that into your unique conditions and the variance, and subsequently why the hardship wouldn't be self-created, because that building is there and it just becomes a matter of like, what are we going to do with it?
Okay. Thank you for that. All right.
So I have a question from Kimball. There.
I want to go back to the parking because I'm not wrapping my head around the sort of footpath of the patient's clients. If you're going to request DOT restricted parking on Farragut, but the ADA entrance with ramp is on piece 2-3, how are people going to get off of their ride and get to the front? Why are you making it around the corner? And this is not a pitch with parking on the piece 2-3, that's problematic in other ways, but I'm just not picturing that footpath and why.
I think the idea was to keep it on the residential side street. It's also a longer frontage. I would think that, I don't know if that's how it works, when a patient gets dropped off, they could, if they're in a wheelchair, they'll wheel that up.
So there's another sidewalk from the curb, there'll be another, is there a curb cut, is there a sidewalk, how do you get off your sunset ride and get onto the sidewalk that leads you to the front?
We would have to get a curb cut on this side. The curb cut's here. Right here, for this part. There's not a curb cut here right now.
And the other question sort of related to that is if you didn't get the parking waiver and you were then required therefore to put, I forget what you said, 12 parking spaces in, where on the front, where on within the property lines would they be accommodated?
Could it be?
Okay.
Got it. So for I saw two other board members' hands up, so I had board member Brian, and then I also had there.
What's the carpet building on buildings? Fake in its present time? Fake. Fake. No one's using it now. That means if this goes in, or it comes down, you know, no problem.
Second.
Was that your question?
Sure. Yeah, and just to be clear, there's actually three options. Either this goes in, building comes down, or somebody asks for waivers to use that building for some other use. Because just like Zeb had an opportunity to come in and ask for waivers with BSA, another applicant could come in and ask for waivers to use it. So, and I don't know if you want to talk about the church. Yeah, just the history of how we ended up with this property. Is that the church that was there spent over a year trying to sell the property, particularly to other houses of worship or whatnot. After they, acknowledged that it was more than find somebody that would pay the price that they were looking for. We approached them saying, this is something that you have open. It wasn't an ideal that we're coming in to take a house of worship and then change it away. That the church was desperate to, they had no congregants since the church was dead at that. But given the fact that they were, after an extended period of time, willing to sell this to someone that wasn't the church, that's where we came in and said, this is a less than ideal situation. And ironically, we tried to contend our purchase based on this go through, but we've been working on this project for almost a year. And the church wasn't built. That was part of the backstory. Ideally, I would not like to be today begging for a variance for a property that I may not be able to use. It's the way New York City works.
Okay, thank you. So, that's right.
And I'd like to thank you for sharing the story behind. I'd like to go back to the parking again. Early in the presentation, you said this has 2 spaces. It requires 12 spaces. So what does that mean? It's required to 12 spaces in your own property.
Sure. So zoning would require 12 spaces. So if basically, we're at BSA right now, and this building, what you see is what you get. There's no changes being made to the exterior. There's no changes being made to the parking. When we applied to change it to a medical facility, instead of 2 spaces being required, there would be 12 spaces required. So one of the waivers we are asking for BSA is for a waiver of those 10 spaces.
And if you're looking at Farragut Road versus 23rd Street, since it's a corner spot, I think you probably can get 2 spots in front of the space.
Yeah.
And then you have the driveway, the curb cut, which also can be used as a drop-off space. As you said, most of this will be for drop-off, right? Correct. Is there a reason why you chose Farragut versus East 23rd Street? And thinking about Sean's question as far as the patient coming out, why did you choose Farragut?
And we're open to discussing this. We're kind of at the preliminary stages and thinking about where that would occur. The idea, I think, for Farragut was that you have a longer frontage there, and it's more of a side street. But we would be open to considering something that you'd like us to consider to use the street as the traffic drop-off area.
Do you find that you will have a number of people coming at the same time that people could double park cars? You have designated space, but even with that, we have, because that Farragut Road is used often.
I don't see that here. It's probably likely that we're gonna have at most 3 at any time. I also. Ultimately, it's up to you to.
Whether the ambulance service.
No one would stretch on, not accepting patients that come in stretchers, but some patients may hold to using an ambulance. I would think that my ideal patient is willing to come to the business. They're not becoming.
Are there any plans in the future to expand them?
No,
Yes, to go back.
yeah, it's not possible. Well, we say not possible. You need to go through an entirely new variance application. And I think it's, it's challenging enough to just get this building, but yeah.
And last question, can you share with us? What the locations are?
I have a location in Howard Beach, which is very similar in the sense that it's also a sleeper neighborhood. Like, it's a very quiet residential neighborhood. Similar, not that it's a house of worship, but similar to corner property. Once a residential home turned into a has similar use in terms of patient volume, in terms of patient provider interaction. That's something that I think can be very similar, all around. The separate site that we have here on that site is a much smaller capacity in terms of the patients that we see there, much less, that's on the oncology. So those patients are just very different. They're more mobile. They can come themselves. They're not coming in as well. Say different nature of the disease.
Okay, so I see William Parker. Just first you had your hand up. And then for the folks in the back, I do have a list of names for the public hearing testimony. So after that, we'll go down the list of these people's names. So.
Can we go to the slide that shows the Farragut side of the building?
That's the photo.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
On Farragut, what is the difference in length across Farragut versus the space it would take up on 23rd? I don't know if I'm seeing this correct. Is it 80 versus 60?
Listen, that's the width of the street. So we have 100-foot frontage lot wise, plus the sidewalk, which is approximately 14 feet. Let's call it 100. You don't want to be on the corner anyway. Right. Call it 100 feet. Here we have 50 feet.
Okay.
So it's twice the size of Farragut. I think that's why they were leaning towards it.
But my question is then, if you are coming, we're gonna have to do a curb cut on Farragut. If you're coming out on Farragut, you will have to travel 100 feet plus the 50 to enter the accessibility entry, because there's no entry on Farragut.
Yeah, around the block. Yeah, right here. So right here is a sidewalk. It's open. And then you have to cut it. You don't have to go here, but this black here indicates concrete. So we come here and the ramp is
On the other side. But either way, it'll be about 100 feet.
Let's say, because it's a 25, 75, either way, 100 feet is a good number.
Versus if you were doing a drop off on 23rd, you would have a shorter.
You're here, you can come straight through here and then come up to that ramp.
So with those numbers, my question is, I guess I'm trying to still double down on the why the choice of moving to Farragut versus East 23rd, knowing that the nature of the clients that you're gonna have, like your name most likely is gonna need accessorized. I'm assuming if you're an accessorized, that means you're gonna need assistance to get into the building. So that's a longer runway, and also there's not a curb cut on Farragut, so that's gonna also have to be factored into the design. So I guess I just a little insight on that thought process.
Yeah,
Well, I think we could impact on the neighborhood and impact on the neighbors and vehicular traffic on the quieter side of the street.
yeah, but like I said, this isn't, and like everybody said, this isn't a typical traditional office where you have in and out all day and constantly. We're thinking we're gonna need to accommodate at most 2 or 3 drop-offs at its maximum to keep that are gonna be utilizing that. And on 23rd, we probably can accommodate 2, maybe 3. So that's why we were kind of leaning towards Farragut, but I think even still, if we want to explore East 23rd Street, it's absolutely something that we can do. And like I said, ultimately, we would need to put in an application to DOT to approve it and the borough engineer. So if that's something that we should consider, yes.
Sure, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, you can.
In regards to noise and impacting the neighbors, the 23rd side, do you feel that with that number of clients that would be an impact to the neighborhood? Okay.
Not with that low volume, but we do a lot of noise studies associated with the traffic, and this is not
So it wouldn't impact them if the switch was made to the 23rd. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So,
Yes, one question on Dropbox. So I'm just saying maximum communication Dropbox.
That's, yeah, in a realistic scenario, based on the average of 25 persons a day, we're thinking probably 3 to 4.
So I'm actually going to flip this and say, why would this facility with such a low patient traffic even want to pick up on-street parking from the residents with signage and the DOT curb cut? When basically the cars are dropping off or picking up per hour. Ideally, in my view, that 23rd Street, which is behind the building, which is just going to blend into normal, it's part of my experience. So this is just one opinion and residents. But I think putting signages and curb cuts solely for the purpose of drop off at the medical facility is kind of more than maybe necessary when only about 3 patients are going to be coming in and going. So it sounds like it's something that's in play and something you can think about, like maybe it's not necessary. Maybe we prefer to have that parking available to residents. So that's my statement.
thank you. And so Dina, go ahead.
I think that given, and I'm speaking now, I'm putting on my nurse hat, not my speaking for that patients who are coming in, you know, require things like accessory and something. You don't want them now having to be double parked and maneuvering between parked cars. You may not even be able to do that if they're coming in a wheelchair. So they need to have that purpose flexibility.
Yeah, that's
The part I'm thinking back would be whether if say DOT says you got to do it on a surrogate side, is there then the possibility of adding, you know, sort of extend the ramps that comes up on the other side as well? I don't know enough structurally what's going on that.
It's about curb cut. Very, very short. So I have a driveway, I have a curb cut. Basically, when people come to my house, they pull up in front of my driveway, it's a ramp. In other words, people can drop people off at the driveway and they can come right up the ramp. It's like typical Brooklyn driveway.
You see it going in this way, and then they drop in the street, they go right up the ramp. You see, actually, the whole thing, they drop them and then.
Yeah, so just in a world of considered resources, you have, so I just thought that maybe.
That's all. Gotcha. Thank you. And so I do have 2 questions, but I think, you know, listening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get down this and call your name. So these here, they're microphones. So if you feel comfortable, you know, stand up and be speaking to them. But basically, I'll give you 3 minutes, and then here, I think I have 6 names, and so after those 4 names, I have 2 questions. I'll ask them, but that's what we'll do. And so, first person's name I have here is Andrew Phillips.
That's me. That's me. We are neighbors. We live opposite, and we are all here, including the youngest member who will be living through this. 2 quick questions. First of all, thank you very much for all the data. Very helpful. One question, obviously very glad to hear that the volume we're talking about is very low. I have no idea to what extent variance would potentially allow or not allow a change of use. It would still be a medical facility, for example, but I don't know. We turned it into an urgent care after all. And now suddenly, I know that's not the plan, but you know, business changes, of course, and the center may do very well or it may do not so well. So that's, I think, one question. Listening to the discussion about parking and which side, just from living opposite, Farragut Road is by far the busier road. So, you know, if I wanted to be dropped off in a wheelchair, I wouldn't want that to happen on Farragut Road. That's just personal experience, but I guess the DOT will have their opinion on that anyway. So I think those are the two main ones. Obviously, you know, personally, from a perspective of helping the community, I think having a low volume medical center there is fine. I certainly prefer to a 35 feet apartment building, going back to the earlier possibility here. So yes, I think my main questions, first of all, again, thanks for the data. And then, you know, what happens if the business plan doesn't work out so well? Are we looking at an urgent care? Yes, great.
Much like the existing church, not have been able to locate there without a variance. They were provided with serious conditions on the operation of that church. They went out. And so nothing else happens there unless someone goes back to BSA. And so similarly, when Zev comes with his facility, there's very strict conditions in terms of hours of operation, number of occupants, and also specifically the use that is permitted. So if anyone wanted to turn it into urgent care, which I don't think it's appropriate for, they would necessarily have to come back and make all the necessary findings and go to the board and come to this board first. So I don't even think that they would make it past environmental. I think it would just wait to.
Thank you. Thank you very much as well. So the next individual we have up is Richard Cohen.
Yes, that's me.
Right.
So try to speak loud. I've waited. First thing, I find it very strange that in your presentations, the first things you have up, about this one, are very legible. As it progressed, the type got smaller and smaller, more difficult for the people to read and participate. That's one thing. Second, I noticed there's a large contingency of advocates for this proposal here. There may even be some hidden advocates here. I personally think the initial variance that was made over the top to people some time ago was an error. They should not have done it. Perhaps you're about to compound that. Try to speak as quickly as I can because I know it's limited time. Also, being familiar with that location, you mentioned 2 parking spaces that are available. I don't believe that you can park 2 cars side by side there. You'd have to park them in a row in the driveway. Again, that's not usually what people expect when they think they've got a quick parking space. Also for your staff. Your staff will need to park. Then there's the question also, why are you not locating closer to available transportation, like the train line? And why are you not going into real estate located on Foster Avenue or some of the other commercial avenues? I would like to point out that South Midwood is noted as being one of the most diverse communities in the United States. We have Italians, we have Jews, we have Black people, we have Mexicans, we have Islamic people. They are there because no matter what you may think, a neighborhood like this is a beacon to people throughout the world. That's one of the reasons why people still come to New York and come to Brooklyn. By doing something like this, I have a suspicion that this is more about a real estate greed grab for options. There's the similar Lutheran church on the north side of Foster Avenue. I don't know if that's within this district or not, but those folks also came into a situation where they purchased a parcel and found it would be very expensive for them to demolish it. So they've kind of taken a sideways approach. Yes, it's very appealing to tell communities all the wonderful things that you will do or that you project. I don't understand how you can make predictions of the behavior of other people with such assurance. How come it didn't work with a woman who ran the red light on Farragut and hit the bicyclist? If we know so much about the behavior of other people in advance. I could probably go on, but I've probably used up most of my 3 minutes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Person up.
Me. I South Midwood Resident Association, but I certainly don't speak for the organization as a member. Been here 34 years. The second house from the corner on East 22nd Street off of Foster Avenue. So all of my half of the block is taken up by cars of everybody in the apartments that are across Foster Avenue. On my left is a children's, school, what do you call it, preschool? And on the right is a dog walker family. So I love the entrepreneurial nature of single family residences that run family businesses that are appropriate. You know, there are drop-offs, double parking in the morning at that preschool. It's never been a problem in all the years. This is not a residential. This is actual business coming in, and it's. I agree with Richard. I always thought it was a mistake. I was, you know, the fact that you aren't going to change the outside is even worse as far as I'm concerned. It's such an eyesore. It's not part of the neighborhood. It never looked like it, but it's a house of worship. So if that's what it's like, then that's what it's like. I can accept that. But now I'm finding out here that this was the house of worship had to sell. They were in distress, and so they sold, and you took it over. And now you find out that you're in distress if you can't have a house. If you were to change the building or make it residential, I don't mind, you know, two-family home. I can't believe what they're doing behind my house on the corner of 21st and Foster Avenue, 150 by 75 feet, and they're making it a single-family home to sell for $2 million. I mean, that's nuts. That could be a two-family piece, but people make choices.
There's some talk that's gonna be better.
But they're individual. Anyway, I like that we're a residential neighborhood. I like that everything's small family business, and this is not that. And the spill over the apartment, they put the new 6-story apartment on 21st. I'm sorry, on Farragut and 21st. So we have all those people with their cars. Now we have more cars for a business, an actual business, not a family route. It changes where I live.
Just a 30-second response again. Thank you for the comment. You know, just to be clear, under zoning, the existing church was a community facility. Medical facilities like this are also community facilities. If we were to seek to do, because people talked about doing one of these like high intensity clinics there, that's more like a minute clinic, something like that is more of a commercial use, which would actually be designated commercial under zoning. The actual use itself for medical is actually permitted on the site. You can't do it in this building because we have to go back to BSA for changes, but like, you know, and to allow it there. But you would be able to do medical in a residential in an R3X district. There, it's the idea is that they do allow. The law looks in a special way at care, at providing care like this. So you know, understand everything that's going on and such. But I did want to make sure. Again, we could not, you know, if we were here for a waiver to get an actual commercial use here, I don't think that the BSA would stand for it because it's too divergent from what you could do as a right. But to enlarge an existing, like, and to allow more square footage in that building to be used for medical is, you know, what we think is permissible or would be.
So, Mr. Clone, I do see your hand, but time, not medical.
I might have had 2 seconds left on my 3 minutes, but okay, I'll stand up.
So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So the next individual, please let me know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yusuf Ahmed.
Alameri. Yes.
Okay, so Yusuf.
Yes. So my name is Yusuf Alameri. I live across the street from the facility or the church or the house of worship that was there. I have to piggyback off of is it Richard and Jack? And I have to disagree with, like, you know, putting a medical facility in the neighborhood. And it will affect the quality of life of the neighborhood in general, in terms of like noise pollution, light pollution, traffic and parking, double parking. We already see a lot of influx of parking from like teachers, students going to Brooklyn College and the public schools around us. And who's to say that, you know, we're not going to get another, if this goes through and this becomes a medical facility, there might be future medical facilities around us, which would impact the quality of life of the neighborhood, and it not becoming a residential only, it'll be also commercial, and then zoning changes and things happen and it doesn't end up being like the community that I once moved into back in 2012. It's very quiet. There's not a lot of heavy traffic or any disturbances. And I just think that having the facility here doesn't quite make sense, especially with the low volume of clients. It would make a lot more sense near, like you said before, near transportation like trains and buses versus having people to drive constantly to the facility. And yeah, I just think the lot itself could be used for something that could better serve the community versus a medical facility that's specific towards a specific group of people. And yeah, I think if you want to take the time, some of my time to respond back, you can.
It's a
If you could allow it.
Thank you. So, that's a appreciate suggestion. We still have seconds.
Yeah, I just want to know if you could answer if will this affect like future medical facilities or any commercial facilities being built because of the granted like zoning for this medical facility?
Yes, well, you know, we do rezoning applications where we'll rezone several properties to allow for different uses. This is not that, this is a site-specific variance, which only deals with this one site. And sadly, right now, the most viable use if the building fell out of Zeb's hands and was available is for what it's built for, which is with a worship space which would accommodate 90 parishioners. So, you know, when we talk about having 3 people there an hour and 24 over the course of the day, you can imagine what the intensity and traffic would be around basically using it for what it's legally able to use for right now. So again, we hear you and we're like, we want to hear these comments because the process doesn't end tonight. But I would tell you that, you know, as far as likely outcomes, the most likely outcome in the absence of this would be for very intensive community facility use, and maybe one that would allow for, you know, dozens, if not over 100 people.
Thank you very much for your time. So, and so the next person I have up, and please correct me if I mispronounce your name wrong. We have Alexandra Alvarez.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So,
First is a question. Is the building going to be empty after 5 o'clock and on the weekends? Or will there be anybody in that building to secure that building? And to look out the windows and see if there's homeless people and people shitting in front of the building and sleeping. We've already had problems with this building of squatters all around it. Will there be anybody there on the weekends and at night?
I have no intention.
Okay, so it's gonna be empty, and this is a problem for the neighborhood. I also want to say that no one has mentioned, you know, we got the school just a block away, and that street is the main street for the school. There's very little parking. People are always begging for parking in our neighborhood. Backing out is so dangerous, and I am totally against it. And I don't, and as someone commented, and I don't understand the comment of when they brought up, you know, that other thing they could do is do two family homes and maybe would have 4 neighbors who could be great neighbors, actually living there all the time and watching out for our community. Why some folks think this is so much better. It's obvious it's better. I don't see it being better. I see the double parking, all this chaos, maybe some lights. And like you said, the 2, they're not parking spaces. You got to be one in after another. Okay, so thank you for listening. I'm totally against it.
thank you very much.
So as a point of reference, I can understand the concern about having homeless squatters or whatnot. Looking at the property as it has been vacant for the past few years, under our ownership, almost a year. So in the past year that we've owned it, we've kept the property addressed.
I live on the block. There have been homeless people that we've had to address. All the trees, you've got more lantern flies on the tree of heaven. Several trees, wait a minute, several of the trees that they planted, and I said, you know, you can't do it like this. The trees are gonna die. Those trees are dead. I mean, I don't really know who's watching out for it.
I have, and the community and a lot of really hardworking people in my community, we have talked for weeks trying to address a fellow who was living and for quite some time in that little side on Farragut, in that little area against the fence of the next home.
So Ms. Baltarzi, thank you very much for sharing that.
So on that topic, I hear the neighbors' concerns, I fire in the project to make it that, you know, people move into properties where people aren't actively visiting. They very rarely move into places where people are coming every day. So even while it's vacant, we care for it, and we will continue to care for it to maintain the security of the facility itself. Medical facility should not have homeless people living on the property. We're going to guarantee it. We're not going to tolerate it.
Thank you. So Mr. Cohen, I see your hands again in the interest of time.
Thank you. 10%.
And so the next individual I have on the list is Cecil Riley.
That's me.
All right, Mr. Riley.
I'm wondering if it even makes sense to talk. Because the people who are building it are not living there. And we are hearing like maybe 5 or 20 people will be there per day. That wouldn't be doing good business. It's easy to say that. We that are living there, people talking about parking. We can hardly find place to park now. Like we have the school people park there and walk back to it. We can't back out there. We talk about the trees there. Nothing works. I'm not sure if this meeting is even worth my time because I think this is a done deal. They are going into business. You don't tell me that there's going to be having a small business and it be kept as a small business. Nobody does that. And it's a shame. I'm totally against it myself because I live there. I bought the house there because of what I saw there. And I saw it was a quiet neighborhood. That people who live there own their homes, not a commercial place. I might as well go down and live at Nostrand Avenue on Fulton Street.
What this person said is, you would ultimately welcome to the public regarding being actually concerned that special permit to authorize the establishment of an outpatient ambulatory medical facility open the floodgates, also with a private time. These businesses preparing it into the roads, which would destroy the residential fabric of the neighborhood. I have since learned that existing zoning regulations would prevent that from happening. My main initial concern about this proposal is not. I am not particularly fond of the exterior look of the current temple building. I was pleased to learn that the temple owners are not seeking to make it larger or taller. In fact, they are not seeking to change the exterior in any way. They are simply looking to obtain the same waivers that were granted when the temple was built. If not granted, they would likely be required to conduct a complete demolition and rebuild, disruptive to the community. So this individual says, given these factors, I support this proposed use, including the waiver from being required to construct a parking structure. This individual then says their main concern is with exterior signage. As you know, South Middle is a quiet residential neighborhood. Flashing or static illuminated exterior signage on Farragut Road would be a eyesore and disruption. I believe the community board should formally request on behalf of the community that the new owners be sensitive to the feelings of their neighbors and refrain from installing such signage. And then this individual did say that they did have a question regarding use, whether this was going to be an MRI facility and or a hematology facility. And that's the written testimony from this individual that I read into the record.
Oh, you want to start with the top?
Yes, please.
So I'll just, a brief response, there's no objections to everyone. On the topic of signage, I agree with the, that large neon signs would be inappropriate for the neighborhood, of course. But specifically thinking of my patient population, no one's looking to advertise and they're going to be there. Right? We're not appealing to walk-in traffic, saying, come here, you need my services. Right? So there's an added benefit for us to be the street on behalf of our patients, and that's something that we're committed to doing that. Address the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a technical question. And so the technical question that I have is statement of facts. There's a particular section 73-03, and it's under E, and it says this finding is inapplicable as in term of years is not specified by zoning regulation 73-34. And so the clarity that I have is, does this mean that there is no term of limits regarding the zoning variance that the board, if the board decides yes, then the board can set limit?
And so it's a question, so 7303 to the general special permit findings, 73134 was the specific special permit with regards to amendment. And 7303 merely asks that, reinforces that if there's a term, they basically impose a term. The building's there, so in BSA cases where somebody does construction and build a new building, they typically don't term the years in terms of the duration of the establishment. So for example, if I'm looking for a commercial use in a residential district, they'll say, hey, Lobel, 10 years and come back to us. Given the fact that the actual medical use itself is permitted there, and the building remains the same, it probably would not, the board probably would.
But then, so it wouldn't be for the board. And it's right. So,
Yeah, I mean, the board is always permitted to provide conditions to resolution. So, sure, I guess BSA can do that.
I think we're talking about two different boards. The community board could set the condition in the recommendation, and then the BSA board of standards will be able to either adopt.
okay, yes, thank you for that. Okay, so board members, we had a discussion and also heard like testimony from public, so I thank you for that. And then we also have written testimony. So, given the conversation that we had,
Is there a motion?
oh yeah, sure. So given the discussion, do I have a motion? Can I make an amendment to the motion? And so we've heard concerns regarding concerning regarding lighting, and then there's also on the hours of operation. For parking, Mr. Manager.
Parking method of operation, no illuminated signage, and then a question about sunsetting the variances. The ones that I picked up.
Okay. So then let me reframe this. So do I have a motion? This application with the conditions regarding parking, sunsetting of the variance, the light pollution, and what's the fourth criteria?
I would word it as no illuminated signage, and then condition approval on the presented method of operation.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Right.
Point of clarity though, what is mentioned amendments based on parking? Can we be specific what the amendment?
But there should be no application in DOT for
Thank you.
That's just my idea, and I'm just.
So I'm just asking so we're all clear, we're not voting on something that's unclear on it,
Yeah.
So either 23rd or 3rd.
That it would sort of revert to Kirsty's suggestion that the parking, that the use of the street, the use of the street of anybody who's going to anybody else's house on that clock. And, if the driveway is already a curb cut, an accessory right to pull up to that. that use that curbside as the access. If the board feels like it's too heavy of a live down restrictions.
Yeah.
If we have any comment on sunset, clause, because why would we receive restriction on sunsetting? Facilities? If we're not just going down to two-family houses, those two-family houses, that facility, right? As long as it's within the structured zoning of the side of the building and the parking that's allotted for this building. So why would we be sunsetting their piece of property, which is 400,000, right? Just because they're asking for a variance for 10 parking spaces, right? I would eliminate that one completely because that's as right they can put that there today as is out, you know.
I agree.
Yeah.
For the record, I agree with that. So I see what you're saying. The reason I said that is just because, you know, and someone corrected. Basically, the reason that I do like the conditions is just that it's a bit of enforcement, right? It's a bit of an enforcement check. Or to like granted, using people, you're not looking at any deals, but I like the fact that it's something where when an entity has to come back before us, we have a mechanism to say, hey, you came before us. This is what we as a board came to you. And so that's the reason. So I see what you're saying.
I would agree to that. I would agree to that if they were asking for variance on how they are.
So they're asking for not the use, the use is permitted. They're asking for a table limit. So to be over anything over 1,500 square feet, that's their asking. So the protection would be
Exists. Building exists.
what they used to. So the question is, do you, well, that's what I'm talking, and so the question is, does the enlargement create a situation where maybe needs that monitoring, particularly with those concerns of, well, what if it becomes an MRI facility as well? I think that would be the thought.
Actually, if I could just offer one really quick thing, which is that the other way that we're different than somebody, the BSA saying, okay, build this building and it's okay, is that there are going to be conditions to this resolution. And so to the extent that an applicant doesn't observe those conditions, the applicant will go back to BSA for compliance hearing. So for example, they put in a medical clinic that sees 50 patients an hour, which call them back into BSA and BSA can. It's just that's not.
It's not really needed.
Correct.
Or with the other ones, which also have. So then, can you repeat the condition again? It's the sunset.
Approval conditioned upon the applicant's. I did a minute ago, denying parking restrictions, so the like DOT for restricted parking. The condition of maintaining the method of operation as presented in this application, and just for the record, no one will be signing.
So then, do I have a motion? This application, those conditions that were stated. So then, we do it this way, so all board members.
Can you repeat those conditions one more time?
They will not seek parking relief from the Department of Transportation. The approval will be conditioned on the method of operation that was presented this evening, and they will not, they will not put up illuminated signage.
Thank you for that. And so first things first, are there any board members who are eligible? Any board members who are abstaining? Are there any board members opposed? I see one. So all board members in favor? So what that means, So folks, what that means is this recommendation passes. So the next step of the process is that we have our general board meeting in late October. And so for me as the chairperson, one of the things that I have to do is I have to report out a summary of the public hearings. And so when it comes to that part of it, I'm going to summarize this public hearing, summarize the recommendation. And then that recommendation is going to come before the full board. Full board is going to vote on that recommendation, and then that gets taken to the rest of them. So, Mr. Cohen, you have a question?
Yes, I don't understand why even amongst the gang of people who are like advocating for this, there are contradictions amongst themselves. Don't, it ain't right. But thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak, even though we're not listening. Thank you.
So, Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
I'll let you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that this is not the only hearing on this application. The Board of Standards and Appeals will also have public hearings, and you will have additional opportunities.
We know that, yes. Thank you. Yep.
It wasn't only talking.
Well, you were looking at me, and before you indicated that I was not listening, well, so I want to be sure that you knew that I was listening. Thank you.
10-4, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Cohen, and yes, Cohen and Mr. Riley.
Thank you.
Short story, yes, so spicy. So great.
You think so, though? I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, sir. I think he got smoked.